What is up, YouTube, and welcome back to my channel. If you are sensing the little hoarseness in my voice, I am a little bit under the weather, so please, if you hear some screeches and shouts, just know it's the mucus that's currently attacking my throat. If you guys are new to my channel, please go ahead and subscribe. It's free of charge. I'm begging at this point. For today's video, we're going to be talking about the announcement that Katy Perry and Gayle King are going to space. Yes, you heard that correctly. And they're going to space on Blue Origin's New Shepard. So for today's video, I'm going to be getting into what is this space trip that we're discussing? Who are the people that are going on this trip? What is the story with Jeff Bezos and Blue Origin? Do you guys remember the famous photo that was going around during Trump's inauguration? You all thought that this was the gathering of billionaire tech bros. But once you guys watch today's video, you are going to be seeing this photo in a very different light. And I'm going to tell you right now, it has maybe nothing to do with tech and everything to do with space and your future living on Earth. All right, so to give some background on this quote-unquote historic Blue Origin mission. This story first broke the news because it was the first all-female spaceflight since 1963. Now, this is a little bit misleading if you look into it, because the first female spaceflight in 1963 was a solo female spaceflight. So I don't even know if it was intending to be the first female spaceflight, it just happened to be so. And that spaceflight was done by Valentina Tereshkova of the Soviet Union. For the new spaceflight that was just recently announced, this will be the 11th human mission for the New Shepard. And this is just a specific type of flight that is created by Blue Origin, which is Jeff Bezos' company. Now, the flight is called NS-31. The 31 refers to the number flight that it is. So there have been 31 total flights, but like I said, there only have been 11 human flights on this specific spacecraft. And this program to date has flown 52 people over the Kármán line. And the Kármán line, I'm going to show you a photo of this. This is the internationally recognized boundary between Earth and space. So who is going to space? Let us meet the crew. If you guys do not know who Lauren Sanchez is, she is an entrepreneur, she is a helicopter pilot, and she is a person that is being named as the organizer or the one that is leading the crew on this space expedition. We then have Gayle King going on this trip as well. She's obviously a journalist and a co-host of CBS Mornings. Gayle has expressed a lot of fear in going, and if I were Gayle, I would be shaking in my freaking boots. I don't even like to fly on airplanes, let alone think that I'm about to get out of the Earth's atmosphere. So I'm gonna show you a little clip of Gayle talking about being asked to do this, and also like what you could just read the fear off of her body language.
I have to tell you, I'm so afraid.
Stop, Gayle.
I am. I'm so afraid, but I'm also so excited about it. When they asked me, and they asked me around Thanksgiving, I was like, no. Then I started thinking about it. I met with favorite daughter Kirby, favorite son Will, Oprah. That's my kitchen cabinet. They will all be there that day with their spouses. And I just thought, what a unique opportunity.
We also have Katy Perry, who is obviously an international pop star. Famously, she sang the song E.T. about extraterrestrials. We then have three other women that are a little bit less known, but still worth mentioning. Aisha Bowie, she is a NASA rocket scientist. We have Amanda Wynn, she is a Nobel Peace Prize nominee and also a civil rights activist. And lastly, we have Carrie Ann Flynn, a nonprofit leader and a film producer. So with this group, I was scratching my head a little bit because I was like, what do all of these women really have in common? How are these people going to prepare? How is Katy Perry, who is probably maybe the busiest amongst all of them, going to properly prepare to go into space? What I have learned about this expedition is that it is a total of 11 minutes. I'm gonna show you a little graphic here, and you're gonna be able to see that the launch time up to space, it goes upward 62 miles. That is about like 2 to 3 minutes. The time that it is maneuvering in space, this little capsule, is about 4 minutes. So you have that like kind of anti-gravity situation, and then the remaining time is spent on the descent back down. So it is a very quick trip. Therefore, it doesn't require a lot in terms of preparation. In this clip, you'll hear Lane Best, who is a venture capitalist, talk about how the training really only takes about 2.5 days to complete, and they're simulating the sensation of going up in the rocket.
It's 2.5 days of classroom training. A lot of people ask me, did you have to do any medical or physical, type of things? The reality is that there's just a lot of science. This is an autonomous vehicle, right? So there's not a pilot or there's not an astronaut there. So they teach you to profile the flight. In the classroom, you go through simulation, and the simulation is really sitting inside the capsule and hearing all the noises, understanding there's screens which show you what's happening every second along the flight.
And he was actually able to participate in the New Shepard expeditions twice. Now, if you're wondering how much this costs, he said that for someone who is successful in business, it was a relatively small price to pay to be able to do something like that. I do think that this expedition is designed to be a success. It actually must be a success. So I posted a little clip talking about this subject on TikTok, and I think a lot of people were saying, like, uh-oh, like he's sending his partner Lauren Sanchez up into space. Doesn't sound like a great idea. And kind of like wishing a little bit of ill will on this group. And I want to say that I want them all to come back safely. What's important to consider about this group of women, why they are pulling in Katy Perry, Gayle King, is New Shepard is meant to be used for commercial space expeditions. And Jeff Bezos has talked multiple times about utilizing Blue Origin or a sector of Blue Origin for space tourism. So it's important that this mission goes well. And the reason why they are inviting these well-known figures is because they're going to be serving as testimonies to the public to let people know that, hey, this kind of expedition is a safe thing to do, thus boosting the sector of the space tourism for this company. And if you guys can remember from your history classes, or maybe we didn't really learn this in school, but a lot of people are familiar with the Challenger of 1986, which infamously exploded just a couple of seconds after takeoff due to like weather conditions. And this program had a teacher on board. And that's why it became such a big news, because yes, there were astronauts on board, but also there was a teacher, which meant to serve as more of like a symbolism of how space exploration was going to be accessible to all, or it was for all Americans, because you have a symbolic figure like a teacher there on board. I think this is a very similar case where it's like we have a journalist, we have civil rights activists, we have a musician, we also obviously are going to have someone that represents like NASA and rocket science on board. And so by being able to represent all these different factors, what it's signaling to the public is, hey, this is safe. You can see yourself in these people. Therefore, you should come and spend your money with us for any kind of space tourism that you want to have in the future. All right, so I've mentioned Blue Origin multiple times, but you guys probably might not know what that company is, or maybe you do. But just to give you a very quick introduction, Blue Origin was founded by Jeff Bezos in 2000 with the goal to make space expeditions more accessible and sustainable. Now, Jeff Bezos did appear on the Lex Fridman podcast in 2023. I think some of the standout moments from this podcast were him describing that he sees space as the future for human civilization, as in wanting to build colonies in space for humans to live in that would support population growth.
We will take materials from the moon and from near Earth objects and from the asteroid belt and so on, and we'll build giant O'Neill style colonies. And people will live in those. And they have a lot of advantages over planetary surfaces. You can spin them to get normal Earth gravity. You can put them where you want them. I think most people are going to want to live near Earth, not necessarily in Earth orbit, but in, Earth, but near Earth vicinity.
And what I think is a little bit disturbing about this is part of me thinks, hey, this is great. Space expedition, why not? Let's go, let's explore. The other part of me thinks, hey, there are space colonies that are going to be built by Jeff Bezos' company. Therefore, this colony in a way represents its own territory. who would be running this colony, who would be regulating it, who would be the leader of this colony, especially in a place like space where humans aren't just able to freely leave or come and go as they need to. So it raises a lot of questions, and I think it's going to be a conversation that's going to be ever evolving. Now, Jeff Bezos also mentions another funny thing. He is asked by Lex if he ever envisions himself going to the moon, and he actually says no, he doesn't see that for himself in this lifetime.
It's very unlikely. I think it's probably something that gets done by future generations by the time it gets to me. I think in my lifetime, that's probably going to be done by professional astronauts. Sadly. I would love to sign up for that mission. So don't count me out yet, Lex. You know, give me a fighting shot here, maybe. But I think if we are placing reasonable bets on such a thing in my lifetime, that will continue to be done by professional astronauts.
Yeah, so these are risky, difficult missions.
And probably missions that require a lot of training.
I find it interesting that he himself doesn't seem to want to go, even though he is the one that is financing the production of this spacecraft, and it is his company. So I feel like if you are not buying what you are selling, shouldn't that raise some alarms? And lastly, Lex asks him about how he feels about SpaceX. Interestingly enough, he says that he doesn't see SpaceX as a competitor.
Blue Origin and SpaceX. Are you competitors, collaborators? Which and to what degree?
Well, I would say, just like the internet is big and there are lots of winners at all scale levels. I mean, there are half a dozen giant companies that, the internet has made, but there are a bunch of medium-sized companies and a bunch of small companies, all successful, all with profit streams, all driving great customer experiences. That's what we want to see in space, that kind of dynamism. And space is big. There's room for a bunch of winners, and it's going to happen at all scale levels. And so, SpaceX is going to be successful for sure. I want Blue Origin to be successful, and I hope there are another, 5 companies right behind us.
What's funny about that, and we're gonna get into it in just a second, that Jeff Bezos actually had sued NASA over a contract with SpaceX. So it's funny that he doesn't necessarily see himself as a competitor. I see this more as a diplomatic approach towards addressing his company in the context of SpaceX, NASA, and how all those are going to be working together. Which brings me to the next point in this video. What are all the connections between all of these space companies? What is going on with NASA? Because isn't that a federally funded program? And like I said, this photo of Trump's inauguration that we were all saying, it's the tech bros getting together. It's actually something very different. If you guys do not know, NASA is a federally funded program, which basically means if you're an American citizen, your money, the money that you pay in taxes, is going towards programs with NASA. If we are giving our money to NASA and now SpaceX is coming, does that mean, hey, we got our money back? You are wrong. You're never getting your money back. NASA is actually at the very center funding all of this space expedition, whether it's the SpaceX, Blue Origin, they are the ones that are issuing out the contracts. So one of NASA's newest projects is the Artemis program. I'm gonna read you an excerpt from NASA's website. Artemis is NASA's new lunar exploration program, which includes sending the first woman and first person of color on the moon. Through the Artemis missions, NASA will use new technology to study the moon in new and better ways and prepare for human missions to Mars. And the Artemis program, from what we know, has at least 6 trips. The first trip was to send spacecraft into the moon's orbit, and then the next couple trips after that would send actual human astronauts to the moon. So let's talk a little bit about NASA and SpaceX. In 2021, we know that NASA awarded SpaceX with a $2.9 billion contract to be able to assist with this program. So what part of the program are they assisting with? Well, SpaceX has the launching and the landing equipment. If you guys haven't seen that clip that Donald Trump often references where the capsule is caught or the rocket is caught by the SpaceX technology.
But this spaceship came down and I saw those engines firing and it looked like it was over, it was going to smash, and then I saw the fire pour out from the left side and it put it straight. and it came down so gently, and then it wrapped those arms around it, and it held it. And just like you hold your baby at night, your little baby.
Basically, that's kind of what they're assisting with, is they're assisting with the technology to be able to utilize the same rockets over and over by being able to catch them or launch them in a certain way that would allow for the continual reusage of that spacecraft. Now I'm going to read you two quotes from ABC News, and these quotes are referring to the overall spending, again, that NASA is providing in terms of these contracts to SpaceX. So far, SpaceX has received $2.8 billion in obligations, with the possibility of the total award going up to $4.4 billion, according to federal spending data. SpaceX has received more than $18 billion in federal contracts over the last decades, with NASA making up $13 billion of that. NASA is actually SpaceX's biggest customer, signing billion-dollar contracts to assist with the Artemis program. You're gonna hear me say Artemis program over and over because that is what all these tech billionaires have in common, is that they are involved in this program. Now let me move over and talk about Blue Origin and NASA. Now there's a little bit of a conflicted history here. In 2021, Blue Origin actually sued NASA over that very contract that SpaceX had won. A lot of people critiqued Jeff Bezos at this time for basically delaying space expedition by bringing forth this lawsuit. This was a little bit short-lived because actually Blue Origin later on in 2023 did sign a contract for the same Artemis program to do a similar thing that SpaceX is doing. The equipment that would assist with landing and launching different spacecraft. Now, just to be technical here, that landing and launching equipment is also referred as Human Landing System. You'll see it abbreviated as HLS if you ever look into this topic. Blue Origin is slated to assist with the Artemis 5 moon mission, and SpaceX is assisting with Artemis 3 and 4. Now I'm gonna read you Jeff Bezos' reaction to losing the lawsuit. Not the decision we wanted, but we respect the court's judgment and wish full success for NASA and SpaceX on the contract. Now, like I told you guys, this loss was very short-lived because Jeff Bezos' company, Blue Origin, was contracted to build the same human landing system. So I'm gonna read you an excerpt from NASA talking about Blue Origin. The agency previously contracted SpaceX to demonstrate an initial human landing system for Artemis 3 mission. Under that contract, the agency also directed SpaceX to evolve its design to meet the agency's requirements for sustainable exploration and to demonstrate the lander on Artemis 4. As a result of the contract with Blue Origin to demonstrate on Artemis 5, a lander that meets these same sustainable lander requirements, including capabilities for increased crew size, longer mission duration, and delivery of more mass to the moon. Multiple providers will be available to compete for future opportunities to fulfill NASA's lunar surface access needs for Artemis missions. What I find a little bit funny about Blue Origin marketing this all-female flight is that in a lot of NASA's documentation, I know Elon Musk and Donald Trump are trying to get rid of all the DEI programs, but you also see repeatedly that this Artemis program is going to be sending the first woman to the moon and also the first person of color to the moon, which I think is funny because if you look at the representation inside of the Blue Origin New Shepard mission, you will see that we have an all-women crew, people of color crew, and so in a way, I think this is Jeff Bezos' way to kind of stick it to Elon Musk and also to NASA that like, hey, I'm doing this kind of first in a way, because the thing is, like, for the general public, we're none the wiser. Like, if we went to the moon, if we went to just like suborbital, which is what the New Challenger does, we're none the wiser, okay? The general public, we're just like, oh shit, it went to space, that's awesome. Good for you guys. Now, it's important to note here, because if you're not asking yourself this question of, wait, why is NASA funding SpaceX, Blue Origin for moon landing equipment when didn't we go to the moon already like 50 years ago? Just to give you guys a little synopsis on that, and I have to give a caveat that I am a definite conspiracy theorist on this, so it's gonna be biased. The US has stated themselves that in 1969 to 1972, they were able to complete 6 total human missions to the moon. Now, this is a feat that has only been done by the US. If you remember, the Soviet Union was also trying to get to space in the famous race to space, and they were unable to do so, so they ended up canceling their program before being able to complete. Now, other countries have flown different spacecraft to space, but in terms of human landings, the US has been the only country to have done this, and they did so, like I said, 6 times in those 3 years from 1969 to 1972. So after that long period of no exploration to the moon, this is now where this Artemis program is coming into play. And even though when we went to the moon about 50 years ago, we were able to also return back to Earth, those same astronauts, we also need now this human landing system to be able to do so in a more sustainable way, a more cost effective way. So that's really the goal of the Artemis program, and also the involvement of SpaceX and Blue Origins, because they have this system that allows for the repeated usage of that very same aircraft. So this is why NASA is contracting out these services. Now talking a little bit about Mr. Mark Zuckerberg and Meta. What do they have to do with this? Well, at first, like I said, when I saw that photo, I was like, okay, Mark Zuckerberg just wants to be there, basically. But no, he actually has a purpose also with this very same Artemis program. For the Artemis 1 moon mission, Meta and NASA had partnered together to be able to bring a VR experience to Meta users. I'm gonna read to you guys this blog post that was put up by the VP of VR at Meta. Now space is back in a major way, and NASA is hard at work to return humans to the moon. I'm so excited to see the early energy surrounding space exploration come full circle. And I'm proud to play even a small part in NASA's Artemis 1 launch, which you can watch live tomorrow alongside pre-show content from Felix and Paul Studios in venues in Horizon World. Now, the Artemis 1 mission was already launched in 2022, but there is no doubt that Meta will still most likely be involved in the future Artemis programs, whether that is from the VR side or from what I believe and I call it, they are the media arm of this Artemis program, as in they are bringing this program to the general public by utilizing the platform power and the advertising power that Meta has. And lastly, we have Google and Sundar Pichai, which a lot of people don't know, but he is one of the 4 tech bros that are pictured here. Now, Google has a long history of working with NASA, whether that's providing air quality data or earth science data. They have collaborated on various different kinds of projects. I'm going to read to you guys a little excerpt from NASA's website on Google's involvement in one particular program. NASA and Google broadened an existing partnership to help local governments improve their monitoring and prediction of air quality for better decision making. The expanded collaboration looks to develop advanced machine learning based algorithms that link NASA data with Google Earth Engine data streams to generate high resolution air quality maps near real time. So when we look at this photo from Donald Trump's inauguration, we are not looking at billionaire tech bros that somehow bought their way into the White House. We are looking at the future of space expedition. Now, I do really briefly want to mention something about NASA's history, because I think it points to the idea that we don't always get the best and most exceptional people into our government and also into our government programs. One particular program that NASA was involved with in its early stages was Operation Paperclip. To summarize, after World War II, the US was engaging in this race to space with the Soviet Union and needed the best and brightest minds, which is when the US recruited German scientists who were also formerly Nazis to come to the US and be able to develop new technologies for space expedition. Now, I'm going to show you a clip from Joe Rogan's podcast where there's a journalist that's talking about this particular program. Now this journalist also mentions that there was another journalist that broke this story in the later 1900s.
Linda Hunt, who...
Shout out to Linda.
Yeah, I mean, she broke the story. That's what's amazing. I mean, as a journalist, you're always writing on the shoulders of those before you, right? And she had it really hard because she did a Freedom of Information Act request, got all these documents that no one had ever seen. And then the government sent her a bill for $125,000. And she had to spend a lot of time. This is what I understand. I never interviewed her, but for Xeroxing fees.
Now, it's important to know that this is NASA's history. This is not the history of SpaceX, Blue Origin, or the other organizations that I was describing that I'm aware of, at least. But at least what it shows is, like I said, we're not necessarily exempt at putting the wrong people in positions of power. So I want to hear what you guys think about this topic. Would you guys be willing to go to space if you were given the opportunity? I know my answer. I already told you guys. Do you feel like we should be celebrating this all-female space flight? What do you guys think about the crew that was selected to go on this all-female space flight? Tell me all of your thoughts, and thank you guys again so much for watching today's video. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, everybody.